Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Phase 2 PyTorch Scholarship Nanodegree Orientation. Congratulations to all of you for earning a Phase 2 spot. Phase 1 was extremely competitive, and we are so proud of everything that you accomplished and are thrilled to welcome you to the Phase 2 scholarship community and the Deep Learning Nanodegree. My name is Kathleen Hunt, and I'm a community manager here at Udacity on the scholarships team. Brenda shared that I would be moving into this community for Phase 2, and I could not be more excited. I've worked with scholars on the Grow with Google Scholarship and the Bertelsmann Scholarship, and I just couldn't be more excited to join you all in Phase 2 of the PyTorch Scholarship. And I'm here with Chaitra today, whom you all know very well at this point, and we are going to be going over what to expect in your nano degree in Phase 2, because there are some similarities with Phase 1, but there's also quite a few differences. And we want to make sure that you all have the information that you need to feel prepared going into Phase 2 of your scholarship. And if we can't answer all of the questions today in this video, definitely check out the scholarship website as well as an AMA session. We're going to be holding our first one on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Brenda, Chaitra, and I will all be there to answer your questions that are not answered in this video. So no worries if you still have questions after today. We'll make sure that they get answered in the near future. And with that, I am going to present and kick it over to Chaitra.
Thank you, Kathleen, and congrats, PyTorch Phase 2 scholars. We are so excited to have you in the second phase. Congrats on making it. 3% of you moved on, and I want to tell you it was not an easy decision by any means. Brenda and I spent a lot of time ensuring that the folks who really went above and beyond got into Phase 2, and just know that you really deserve it, and we're excited for you to accomplish great things going forward. So let's kick this off with all the things you need to know for Phase 2. The agenda today will cover an overview of the nanodegree program itself and a little bit about what makes it different from the challenge phase. And we'll talk a bit about projects and project reviews there. We'll also cover plagiarism and the academic honesty policy at Udacity, and take a look at the community programs, initiatives, and resources that you can expect to be forthcoming. And then we'll close out with some frequently asked questions. So what makes this community special? We wanted to kick this off with a few quotes that came from Phase 1. This community was really, really special. And I think the idea of this being a place where everyone can contribute, that there, no one was left behind. It felt like a family. It felt like, regardless of, background, your knowledge of deep learning, no one ever felt like they couldn't ask a question or contribute in some way. And that is something we are really proud of and really want to embrace going into Phase 2. We're confident that all of you will continue to make this community what it is, but just wanted to kick us off with that because it really feels like this has been a super special program, and we're so excited for it to continue. So let's jump in to the next slide, which will talk a little bit about the nanodegree itself. So when you see your classroom, you may have already seen it in your classroom because you have been enrolled, but you will see that all the content unlock on Tuesday, January 22nd. And the first thing you'll notice that's different from the challenge phase is that program homepage, which essentially provides a timeline from when your program starts to when it finishes, which I think is really helpful. It gives you sort of a timeline of projects and dates and milestones that you need to hit in order to finish by the end of the term. Our goal is for you to graduate, so we want to make sure you have all the resources that you need to make that happen. You'll also see 2 tabs next to the overview that are study plan, help, and FAQs, which can also be really helpful resources for you if you need time to structure your learning in some way. I know a lot of us need it. I certainly do. It's a great way for you to build that right into the classroom itself. And help and FAQs is also just, if you have questions, you can jump in there, type in your question. It may already exist, and quickly get the answer if you don't find it from our scholarship site page or the Slack community. So the next slide will show you what is the biggest difference, which is projects. You had the lab in the first phase, which was a project, but this will be a little bit different in that you'll be reviewed by project reviewers, which we'll go into in a little bit. But this is what it looks like. The lesson cards will be on the left-hand side, and then each lesson will also have a project associated with it. You'll see the due date in days at the bottom of that card. And it'll give you all the information you need to be successful in that project. So let's jump into the next slide, which is the process itself. So what is cool about this process is that you have um, actual project reviewers who just can contribute and give you this incredible feedback on your projects when you submit them. You have 5 projects in total that you need to pass in order to be ready to graduate. And each project will come with an overview, a rubric, all the specifications you need to know in order to be successful in that project. And when you're ready, you just have to follow the instructions that are listed in the project lesson and then formally submit it for review. And we want you to really take these projects seriously, because this is not only going to be the culmination of your work in a portfolio that you're going to be able to show to anybody, whether that is a future manager, recruiter, just any time in your career, you can always come back to this. So just, I think, given the due respect and really take the time you need and investment to make these successful. The next slide will show a little bit about the process itself. So each project needs to be formally submitted in order to be reviewed for code. It can take up to 7 days, so just give yourself that time ahead. So you don't leave any projects to the last minute, especially that last one. And then keep in mind that you don't need to pass the project on the first attempt. In fact, many of you may not, and that's okay. I know I certainly have not passed projects on the first attempt, and the feedback you will get is what is going to drive you to learn that content in even more depth, and really, I think, the reason why you're doing this in the first place. So want to make sure that you are prepared to maybe having to resubmit projects more than once, and that's totally okay. And then also give yourself the time you may need to maybe iterate on the project and resubmit. And finally, your last project must be submitted and approved by the final deadline, because if it does not pass that first time, you won't be able to resubmit once that term closes. So just want to give you that heads up. The next slide. So just some commonly asked questions. Are the project deadlines mandatory? So they're not mandatory, but we really want you to think of them as being mandatory. So maybe pretend like they are, because they are there to pace all of you towards that final date, and can be really helpful in ensuring that you're setting up blocks of time prior to the due date so that you're well prepared to submit and move forward. Am I doing something wrong if my project doesn't pass on the first try? So not at all. If you don't submit your project on the first try, use it as an opportunity to learn, to do more deep dive into the content. And projects on average take between 2 and 3 submissions before they pass. So you're totally fine to resubmit. In fact, it can be a really valuable thing for your own learning process. When will I receive my nanodegree certificate? So once you've completed and passed all of your projects, you will be prompted through the graduation flow, which is a relatively quick and automated process. It might take up to 30 minutes or so. And then once you graduate formally, you receive an electronic version of the certificate that you can access through your classroom. And we can show you what that looks like in a bit. Some keys to success that have been shared to us from prior scholars and students at Udacity that we want to make sure that you are aware of. So what we've seen historically is that students who complete their first project are most likely to graduate. This is really important because you have a lot of the momentum and energy from phase 1, and we want to make sure you really sort of use that to propel you into phase 2 and finish that project, that first project, by the due date that's in your classroom. We're going to hold study jams, taking us to point 2, which have also been really successful in helping students finish their projects, because it brings people together. You get to work on this project that you're both focused on, and each study jam is going to revolve around a project. So you'll have this really specific time and community to work on projects together. So make use of them. Set aside time. This, again, we're going to say this over and over again, but the structuring of time ahead of deadlines is really, really important. And everyone has different ways of learning, but it's about figuring out what is going to work best for you, putting that into your calendar or your phone or whatever works, according to the tools that you use most. Do that. If you need an accountability partner, find that person. You have each other. So, I would just say, this is one of the key pieces to being successful and being able to finish this nano degree. We hear over and over again. So if you can do that ahead of time, you are already, in a great place. And then keep in mind that the nano degree program and phase is just a much bigger undertaking than the challenge because of all the projects, that each of these projects takes time and investment. And I think be conservative in your estimation of how long it's going to take you, because what we find is it takes longer than people expect, especially if this is the first time you're doing a project in a Udacity Nano degree. So maybe use that first project to set your expectations for what to do for the next 4 projects that are coming. So stay on schedule, time management is key, and use each other. Those would be my takeaways for you. Earning and keeping the scholarship. So one thing we want to point out that we've referenced a little bit is that we want to make sure everyone that's in this nano degree is making use of the scholarship opportunity. As you know, only 3% of you made it forward. And so we want to make sure that you guys are really taking advantage of it. So if we don't see progress made in the first 2 weeks, that means if you haven't logged into the classroom and you haven't made any progress, you will lose a scholarship opportunity. This is something we don't take lightly, and we want to make sure we're communicating loud and clear to everyone who's in the program. If you see any issues with this, please ping us directly, but this is our expectation for everyone in the program. All right, I'm going to turn it back to Kathleen.
Thank you so much, Chaitra. And at the end of everything, this is where we want to see you. And we're sharing all of this information with you so you are prepared, you understand what you need to know in order to earn your nano degree certificate, because we know that you all joined the challenge course in order to get to this point, so you would have the opportunity to complete the deep learning nano degree. And now that you're here, we want to make sure that you have what you need in order to earn this for yourself. So when you do get your certificate, this is what it will look like. It'll say deep learning nano degree instead of intro to programming, but this will be your official credential. It's signed by our founder and CEO, and it acknowledges the work and the time that you've put into earning this nano degree. So keep on this as you're working through your projects. If you come home from work and you're exhausted and you don't want to study, just think about this, think about the deadlines, and do your best to structure your time and really hold yourself accountable to that, and use your peers, use this community to support you in reaching your goals. So Udacity is an educational institution, and because of that, we take plagiarism and academic honesty extremely seriously. This is something that we prioritize at Udacity, and we prioritize the academic integrity of all of our students and of our courses. If you go onto the Udacity support page, I'll make sure that these slides are shared with all of you so you have access to these links. You can read our full Udacity honor code. Any form of plagiarism or academic dishonesty is a violation of the Udacity honor code. If you submit a project and it is flagged for suspected plagiarism, someone will reach out to you to get more information. And if Udacity determines that the work is not your own, your submission will be rejected. And you also could face expulsion from your nano degree program or the Udacity platform. If this is found after you graduate, then your graduation credential could also be revoked. So, and that has happened before. So even if you pass a project, you still could have this come back, and you could have to face this later on. Some things that we recommend to avoid plagiarism is to submit one project at a time. There have been cases where somebody submits something and they didn't realize that what they were doing was a form of plagiarism, and they submitted multiple projects at once. And so those were looked at as 2 or 3 cases of plagiarism. Whereas if you submit one at a time, it gives you a chance to get feedback, so you don't run that risk as much. We also tend to see this more towards the end of the program. People are panicking, they're worried about graduating on time. Don't cheat in order to graduate from the program. We really hope that you're all here to learn and build your skills. And if you're plagiarizing, then you're not challenging yourself, you're not building your skills. And that's what this really is about. We want you to get the nano degree, but the nano degree represents more than just a piece of paper saying that you did this thing. So do yourself a service by completing your projects on your own, by challenging yourself, by asking for help when you need it, not by cheating or using somebody else's work as your own. And it is your responsibility to know what constitutes plagiarism. If you're not sure about this, then read the honor code, ask me as your community manager, check with your peers before you submit a project. You can always add notes to your project when you go to submit them to let your reviewer know where you found your sources. So you can always do that too if you have any doubts at all. So I always say that it's better to be more careful than hope that what you're doing is okay. So it's never a bad thing to ask before you submit a project. So I want to do a little bit of a quiz to test your knowledge about academic dishonesty. Some of these are examples of academic dishonesty. Some of them are not. So I'm going to go through these and talk more about how Udacity views them, so you understand how we're approaching the topic of academic honesty. So the first scenario: copying another person's code verbatim and submitting it in a project. Is this a form of plagiarism? And the answer is yes. Hopefully you all knew this, and that was an obvious answer. It is never okay to take somebody else's work and copy and paste it and submit it as your own. The next scenario: copying code or using code that has been provided for you and approved for use in your project by Udacity. Is this a form of academic dishonesty? And the answer is no. So you'll see that in some of your projects, Udacity may provide you with small snippets of starter material or helper code or data that you can use to complete your project. This is generally just basic information to help you get started, and it shouldn't really be testing what you've been learning in the lessons leading up to that project. It will be very clear that this is something that you can use in your project, so you don't need to cite it. And it'll be, like I said, it'll be very clearly communicated to you that it is okay to use this. So if you ever have any doubts, if something hasn't been clearly communicated to you by Udacity about whether or not you can use it, I would definitely check with a peer. Feel free to ask me, but if it's not clear to you, then the answer is probably no. The next scenario: working on a project with a peer, writing code together that overlaps, and then submitting 2 separate projects. So this is a form of academic dishonesty, and I think that this is a hard transition for lots of folks who go from phase 1 in scholarships to phase 2, because phase 1 is so collaborative. You're working together on projects, you're sharing ideas, and because you're not submitting them for formal review, there isn't a concern about plagiarism. And so I really want to highlight this one just to keep in mind, because we want you to continue to work together and to continue to study together. But just keep in mind that when you are collaborating on a project, we recommend that you discuss concepts or implementation ideas and then break off to do your own projects independently, just so you don't risk submitting the same work. Sometimes when you're sharing ideas, it can be easy to take somebody else's idea without even realizing it. Or, if you share a little bit of code, that could still be flagged as a potential plagiarism concern. So it's better to be safe with this and just talk about the concepts and high-level ideas with your peers, and then save implementation for when you're working alone. And the final example is using someone else's code and providing the name of the person it belonged to as credit to their work. So this is also a form of academic dishonesty. And sometimes you will need to refer to others' work, and this is absolutely okay. You can adapt and properly attribute that to the person who created it. Always give the date that you found it and the URL, the name if it's posted. Any information that you have is better when citing your work. But this should only be a small piece of helper code, and it should be something that is open source and written by somebody who has provided their consent for people to use it. And the helper code shouldn't be directly relevant to the concepts being assessed in your assignment, because even if you have permission to use it, even if you properly attribute it, if your project is supposed to evaluate your knowledge, your understanding of a subject, and you're using somebody else's work to demonstrate that, then in that circumstance, you're not actually proving that you've learned the material that you're doing your project on. So that's a high-level overview of academic dishonesty. I absolutely encourage everyone to read Udacity's full policy on this. I'll make sure that this is readily available to you. And if you have any questions, ask. I don't tell you this to scare you. It's just so you understand what's expected of you and understand that you're responsible for your own academic honesty. That way you don't find yourself in a situation that I know none of you want to find yourselves in. So moving on to resources that will be available to you in phase 2. Some of these will look the same from phase 1, and we definitely want to make sure that we're supporting you and focusing on your projects, because these will be taking up a lot of your time, and we want you to be able to focus on those without feeling distracted by other things happening around you. The number one resource that will be available to you in phase 2 that was also available in phase 1 is, of course, your classmates, the community of peers. And we shared the quotes at the beginning. Many people have shared that the best part of phase one for them was the community that they were learning in. And even though participation isn't required for phase two, we really hope that everybody keeps the sense of community going, continues supporting one another, motivating one another, asking questions, answering questions, sharing resources, and just creating this positive learning environment. Because the relationships that you've been able to build are ones that you can keep for the rest of your lives and use throughout your careers. So keep that going in phase two and use one another to get the support you need in order to graduate. Another resource is the website. So that has been updated with information about phase two, including updated FAQs, calendars. You'll be able to find your deadlines on the website and more. So this should continue to be your landing page for any scholarship questions that you have. So come here first to see if your questions have been answered. And we'll definitely be updating it regularly with announcements, events, everything like that. And make sure that all AMA transcripts are on here. So this can continue to be our landing page for all information. Your community manager. So in phase one, this was Brenda. I'm sure you're all really, really sad to see her go, but I will do my best to make it as smooth of a transition as possible. I'm super excited to work with all of you. I will be available in office hours every Tuesday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific time. We're having the first AMA this week on Wednesday, so that's the only exception to this, but office hours after that will be every Tuesday, and I'll be live to answer any programmatic questions that you have about the scholarship. Just like in phase one, for technical questions, I recommend that you reach out to your peers in Slack. I am not able to answer technical questions. Trust me, you do not want me to try. You know a lot more than me about AI, so you don't want to rely on me for answers to those questions. If you have any urgent questions or personal situations, definitely feel free to DM me. General questions, I do ask that you try to keep in office hours just so others can benefit from the answer. If you have a question, chances are somebody else does. But certainly if you have a personal situation that you don't want to talk about publicly, you can always feel free to DM me. And I do my best to respond to all DMs within 24 hours. I try hard to not work on the weekends or holidays. So if it is a weekend or a holiday, I do ask for your patience and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. And yeah, I'm usually pretty good about replying within 24 hours or as soon as I'm able to. Community programs in phase two, we have three main things that we want to focus on in phase two, and you'll recognize these from phase one. And these are all really geared at helping you complete your projects, move through your coursework, and graduate. So the first one that Chaitra mentioned already is study jams. We will continue doing these. They will be before every project is due. And just like in phase one, they'll be pretty informal. You can drop in whenever. You can sign up to lead 1 hour time slots. We'll really rely on student leaders to drive study jams forward. And this is a great opportunity to study with your peers and get the support that you need to complete your projects. Student leaders will also be in phase two, and this is great for people who want to take a more active role in helping their peers. Like I just said, you'll be leading study jams and other community programs that are happening, making sure that people have answers to questions. If you were a student leader in phase one and you want to be a student leader again, great. If you don't want to, you definitely don't have to. And similarly, if you were not a student leader in phase one and you want to give it a try for phase two, we would love to have new people step up. So this is open to anybody who is interested in taking on more of a leadership role and building their leadership muscle. And finally, study groups. We would love to see you continue in your study groups. If you have peers from phase one who are in phase two with you, feel free to keep those going. I'll also be sharing out a document for you to find new study groups for folks who want to switch it up, meet with new people, or try something new. So we'll make sure that you're able to organize yourself into study groups. And I would just say that when working with your peers, keep plagiarism in mind. That's not to dissuade you from doing it. It's just to say that when you're working on your projects, make sure that you're keeping your work separate and that you're just collaborating on concepts and high-level topics. two new resources for Udacity that if some of you who are currently enrolled in other nanodegrees might be familiar with are Knowledge and Student Hub. These are both really new resources. We're really relying on you all to help us build them out. They're kind of in their beta stage right now. So Knowledge is a 24/7 self-help option where you can go to get help with technical questions. So you can type in a question to see if somebody has already asked it. If they have, you can find answers to that question in the list of results. If nobody has asked a question that you have, then you can type a new question and somebody from and other students can answer it, or somebody from the Udacity staff or mentorship team will answer the question as soon as possible. I will say that this is not a place where you should go for immediate help. If you have a little issue that you want a response to right away, definitely ping your peers in Slack first. But this is a great place to come if you want to see what a Udacity mentor might have to say about your question, or if you have something that's less urgent to ask. And Student Hub is in your classroom. You access it via the purple speech bubble on the left toolbar of your classroom. And this is a great place for you to interact, not only with your peers in the scholarship, but also other students who are in the deep learning nano degree. So you can interact with scholarship and non-scholarship students here. These threads are supported by Udacity mentors, so you can post questions here. Again, if you want a really quick answer, Slack would be the best place for you to ask this. So this Student Hub is still in beta. It has limited capabilities, but it's a really cool place just to expand your network and get access to Udacity mentors. So if you're interested, we recommend checking it out, but still continue using Slack as your main landing page for any questions or interactions that you want to have with me or the scholarship community. So that is an overview of resources that you can expect in phase 2. And I'm going to hand it back to Chaitra now to go over some frequently asked questions.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kathleen. That was awesome. One thing before we jump into this slide is just to set expectations for deep learning. A lot of the content in your PyTorch challenge came from the deep learning nano degree that Matt Leonard and his team has put together. So when you go into the classroom, you will see a lot of familiar, maybe lessons or concepts, and just know that that's okay, because each of those lessons is also associated with a new project. So even if you've completed, for example, neural networks before, you have not yet submitted the bike sharing project yet. So wanted to just make sure you are aware that that's why we share content across nano degrees, especially if it's really applicable. So when you jump in there, it might look familiar, but it's not all. There's a lot of new stuff, and it's not all going to be what you've already learned. And we hope you really enjoy it, because I know Matt and his team have worked really hard at putting together this great content. So let's jump into the slide for frequently asked questions. So one of the questions we get a lot, how do I graduate? We covered a little bit of this already, but we just want you to just be really clear that you have to submit all your projects to graduate. So that means they have to be approved. If you're still in the process of submitting that last project and it's been submitted, but right at the deadline, but you haven't gotten it back, it's really hard for us to make any exceptions. In fact, we cannot. So we want you to be planful for that, especially last project that needs to get done and approved by the end of the term. Another question we get, do I need to complete all concepts and quizzes to graduate? This always comes up when we have multiple phases for a program like we do for PyTorch. It was really important in phase 1 to complete every concept and quiz to be eligible to earn a spot in phase 2. However, in this phase, you can still graduate if you skip quizzes or concepts. What is the most important piece of the nano degree is the projects. But that said, we really encourage you to go through all the material, because it's just going to be part of helping you finish those projects and enhance your learning as well. So that's a recommendation. If you've already done them in phase 1, they will actually show up as complete, so you'll be able to tell. But no harm in going over them again, especially if it's something that you feel like can help with refreshing your learning. And then the last question, are the concepts and projects in phase 2 more difficult than in phase 1? And the answer to that is it depends. They can be. It depends on the lesson, the project. It depends on your knowledge and expertise coming into this phase. Some projects may be more difficult than others. In general, students tell us that phase 2 is more challenging overall, just because of the intensiveness of the projects themselves. But just remember, you have a ton of support in this community. You all know each other already, and have bonded in phase one, so it should be even easier at this time around. And you have us, of course. You have Kathleen as an amazing community manager. You have me as, overseeing the program as well. And we're here to answer questions when you just can't find answers anywhere else. But most of all, have fun. Enjoy these next few months. They will go by so quickly. It's really crazy how time flies. And we just want you to have an amazing experience and happy learning.
Awesome. I am going to stop presenting, say a proper goodbye to all of you. Thank you for joining orientation. Really excited to be with you in phase two and get to know all of you better. I've started talking to some of you, and I just really can't wait to continue building this community in phase two and seeing everything that you accomplish and getting to a chance to be part of this amazing phase two community. So join us on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. If you have additional questions that were not answered by this orientation video, we'll see you then. Have a great weekend. Enjoy some time relaxing before you get started on Tuesday. And we can't wait to kick things off with a bang Tuesday morning. Take care. Bye, everyone.